So, page 70, line 873. This is the last section of this canto, this special canto, The Secret Knowledge. I will repeat myself and say that this canto is unique in the whole poem in that it can stand completely alone, and we can think of it as a kind of Aurobindo Upanishad. He is sharing with us the secret knowledge that has come to King Aswapati through his yoga, through the soul's release. King Aswapati has become aware of this knowledge. But this canto is not part of the narrative. Aurobindo sets it aside and shares with us the secret knowledge which underlies the whole poem. And he's been showing us different aspects of that secret knowledge. First of all, the fact that we human beings can have sometimes unusual experiences is an indication of a greater self that lives within us. A death-bound littleness is not all we are. He promises us we have a much higher destiny, much greater possibilities. And then he shows us about the earth consciousness, the evolving earth consciousness, and how, what are the difficulties that it is facing. He says this is our greatest need, to join once more the opposite ends of existence. We see matter at one end, spirit at another. They seem to be contradictory. We have to see that they are extremes of one spectrum, of one creation, one possibility. And he has given us a wonderful promise on page 55 that the transcendent will mount his throne and the earth will grow unexpectedly divine. But nobody will know until it happens. A few shall know what none yet understands. So then he has shown us, the last section that we read began, the master of existence lurks in us and plays at hide and seek with his own force. The Lord has inhabited this creation of his. He has asked his conscious force to create all this as his playground, and he comes here and plays in all of us, and he plays to such an extent that he forgets his origin. In us, he seeks himself as one forgetting. He seeks for himself. And he describes him as the explorer and the mariner. The soul in us, the conscious being in us, is like an explorer exploring the world. But this is an inner ocean, a secret inner ocean without bounds, absolutely boundless. The consciousness in us is growing and exploring. And he says, this is the sailor on the flow of time. That's what we are reading about now. How the Lord, in the course of evolution, has learned to steer this body, this little vessel of his, and he started just going from one port to the next port, carrying perishable goods. But then he becomes more adventurous and goes further, and he has a a merchant ship. His body becomes a merchant ship, and he's exchanging with the environment, carrying all kinds of luxury goods from port to port. That is how far we had come. No? So I'm going to read on from there, and then we'll go back and look at each sentence, sentence by sentence, line by line. So we remember this is the image of the Lord as the soul in a body, being a sailor, an explorer in a ship. So he's explored the great landlocked sea. Now he goes further, passing through a gate of pillar rocks, venturing not yet to cross oceans unnamed and journey into a dream of distances. He travels close to unfamiliar coasts and finds new haven in storm-troubled isles. Or, guided by a sure compass in his thought, he plunges through a bright haze that hides the stars, steering on the trade routes of ignorance. His prow pushes towards undiscovered shores. He chances on unimagined continents. A seeker of the islands of the Blest, he leaves the last lands, crosses the ultimate seas. He turns to eternal things, his symbol quest. Life changes for him its time-constructed scenes, its images veiling infinity. Earth's borders recede, and the terrestrial air hangs round him no longer its translucent veil. He has crossed the limit of mortal thought and hope. He has reached the world's end and stares beyond. The eyes of mortal body plunge their gaze into eyes that look upon eternity. A greater world time's traveler must explore. At last he hears a chanting on the heights, and the far speaks, and the unknown grows near. He crosses the boundaries of the unseen and passes over the edge of mortal sight to a new vision of himself and things. He is a spirit in an unfinished world that knows him not and cannot know itself. The surface symbol of his goalless quest takes deeper meanings to his inner view. His is a search of darkness for the light, of mortal life for immortality. In the vessel of an earthly embodiment, over the narrow rails of limiting sense, he looks out on the magic waves of time, where mind, like a moon, illumines the world's dark. There is limned, ever retreating from the eyes, as if in a tenuous, misty dream light drawn, the outline of a dim, mysterious shore. You want to start, Kana?
Passing through a gate of pillar rocks, venturing not yet to cross oceans unnamed, and journey into a dream of distances, he travels close to unfamiliar coasts and finds new haven in storm troubled heights.
Let's pause there. So we were reading about him traveling from port to port in a great landlocked sea. Makes us think of the time when people were crossing the Mediterranean. And this gate of pillar rocks in the ancient tradition, it's Justin told us something different last time, but the way we have always understood it is that this is the gate where the Mediterranean moves out into the Atlantic. I think modern scholarship has now a different idea, but anyway, it's the same idea, that within a limited circle the explorations have been going on. But then people started to go further through this gate of pillar rocks. And there, of course, they encountered this huge ocean. But at first, they didn't set out to cross the ocean. Instead, they followed the coast. We know that the Phoenician sailors, they sailed down the coast of West Africa. They may even have crossed around the Cape Horn and moved up the coast of East Africa. And we also know that they traveled around the coast of Europe and came right up to the northernmost point of what is now Scotland. And we have evidence that the people from Tyre and Sidon in the eastern Mediterranean, they were trading with those people in Scotland. But the ships were not crossing the wide ocean, they were just following the coasts. So they didn't dare to cross oceans unnamed and journey into a dream of distances off into goodness knows what. He travels close to unfamiliar coasts. He's exploring as he's going. They are not familiar. And he finds new havens, new harbors in storm-troubled isles. I'm sure he's thinking about the storm-troubled Isle of Britain there. What's the next step? You would read, yeah?
Or guided by sure compass in his thought, he plunges through a bright haze that hides the stars, steering on the trade routes of ignorance.
Yes, next two lines.
His prow pushes towards undiscovered shores. It chances an unimagined continents.
Right, yes. So this is what Columbus did. He was so sure that if he sails east, he sails west, he's going to come around to the east again. He's guided by a sure compass in his own thought. Nobody told him that. In fact, most people thought he was completely crazy. So this inner explorer does something like that. He feels sure of some destination, and on his path towards that destination, he chances on unimagined continents. Columbus is supposed to have discovered North and South America, but the inner traveler comes to worlds and lands and experiences and possibilities that he had no idea about before. And then he goes even further. Would you read, sir, please?
Please excuse me.
You don't want to read? Alice. A prow. The prow is the pointed part at the front of the ship. So the prow pushes. That's the leading part of the ship. Very often there's a figurehead, no? With eyes looking. Alice. Yeah.
A seeker of the islands of the Blest, he leaves the last lands, crosses the ultimate seas. He turns to eternal things, his simple quest. Life changes for him its time-constructed scenes, its images veiling infinity.
Yes. So the islands of the Blest were supposed to be out in the far, far west where nobody had ever been. No? But it was also a kind of heaven, a blessed place. Perhaps the pre-Christian people of Western Europe, they thought that their kings and their great people, when they put them off onto the ocean, and their dead bodies all wrapped in wonderful treasures, sent them off, that they were going to the islands of the Blest, where the blessed souls live. No? So that is some kind of aspiration in humanity for a better world. No? So searching for that, for the islands of the Blest, he leaves the last lands. There are several places in Western Europe that are called Land's End, or no, in different languages, because the Atlantic was so huge, people couldn't imagine that there's anything beyond it. If you sail off there, you'll drop off the edge. No, there was some kind of feeling like that. So it's a very brave thing to do, inwardly as well as outwardly, to leave the last lands, cross the ultimate seas. So if we think of that symbolically in the development of the soul, what we are doing is turning to eternal things, his symbol quest. We get tired of seeking for the things that human life can give us, however adventurous, however challenging, however exciting. Eventually, the soul wakes up to a longing for eternal things, and then it feels that all these solid images of the earth around us, they're just veiling infinity. We want to go beyond, experience that. Tone.
Earth's waters recede, and terrestrial air hangs around him, no longer its translucent film. He has crossed the limit of mortal thought and hope. He has reached the world's end and stares beyond. The eyes of mortal body plunge their gaze into eyes that look upon eternity.
Yes. It's as if Aurobindo, writing in the 1930s, foresaw space travel. That we can set off on a journey and leave the earth behind. We no longer breathe the earthly air, some other atmosphere. That's a whole new stage in human development. I feel very privileged somehow that I've lived through this happening when Man has left the earthly limits, no? Crossed the limit of mortal thought and hope. He's reached the world's end and stares beyond. What is there beyond the world? Inwardly, what happens is that the eyes of our mortal body, our body that must die, begins to look into eyes that look upon eternity, that have another way of seeing things, eyes that see the transcendence, no limit of time and space.
A greater world, time travel must explore. At last he hears a chanting on the heights, and the voice speaks, and the unknown grows near. He crosses the boundaries of the unseen, and passes over the edge of mortal sight to a new vision of himself and things.
Yes. So time's traveler, that is the soul in us which travels through life and death and other life. No? The traveler in time who doesn't die but is constantly reborn. So there comes a point when that evolving soul personality must explore a greater world. For a long time, he's exploring and finding himself in this world of forms. But a time comes when he must explore that much greater inner world. And then perhaps he hears some distant voice, a chanting on the heights, as if he hears the voices of great rishis and sages chanting on the mountaintops. No? Something calls to him from the distance. He begins to feel close to unknown things. He crosses the boundaries of the unseen. He moves into the subtle worlds that are not visible to our mortal sight. He passes over the edge of mortal sight. Mortal sight is what these physical eyes have. No? It's governed by death and ignorance. But it's possible for the inner eyes and the inner consciousness to go beyond that. And then time's traveler gains a new vision, a new understanding of himself and of things, of the whole world around him. And it's such a beautiful description that Aurobindo gives of that new vision. Amrita, will you read?
He is a spirit in an unfinished world that knows him not and cannot know itself. The surface symbol of his goalless quest takes deeper meanings to his inner view. His is a search of darkness for the light, of mortal life for immortality.
Yes, this is a great secret. We can come, the soul can come to this new vision of himself and things. He realizes, the soul in each of us can realize that we are not just this death-bound littleness. Each of us is a spirit living in an unfinished world. The world has much, much more progress to make, much greater developments ahead of it. No? But at the moment, this world around us cannot know us as we are. It's not aware of spirit. No? And so all what he has described about the limitations of the earth consciousness, it's because of this. It doesn't realize that the divine is dwelling within everything. Our life is a paradox with God for key. And he says that key is hidden. But now the traveler has become aware that that's what he is. He is a spirit in an unfinished world. So then this symbol quest which Aurobindo has been showing to us in the image of the traveler, first in his little boat and then in his bigger ship and then traveling further and further, this surface symbol of his quest takes deeper meanings to his inner view. He sees it in another way, a deeper, truer way. He realizes that all his searching is a searching of the darkness of ignorance, for the light of full consciousness. It's a search of mortal life that is dominated by death and ignorance. This life is searching for the immortal state.
These two lines are from Upanishad.
Sorry?
These two lines. Darkness looking for the light and mortal life looking for
There's
the
this beautiful little shloka, no?
Yeah.
Tamaso ma jyotir gamaya amritama amritam mrityuma amritam gamaya. Yes. Joel, would you read?
The vessel of an earthly embodiment over the narrow rails of limiting sense, he looks out on the magic waves of time, where mind, like a moon, illumines the world's dark.
So each of us is traveling in this vessel, in this body of an earthly embodiment. But it's not the embodiment that is the traveler. It's the spirit within. So the spirit within, the soul within is traveling in this earthly embodiment. That's our ship. And we are looking out, as we might look out from the deck of a ship, across, he says, the narrow rails. The deck of a ship will have rails around it to prevent people from falling over. No? So those narrow rails for us are our senses. Our senses are what delimit the world around us. No? They're what we experience outside of ourselves. It all comes to us from the senses. And the senses are limiting. They only tell us a little bit about the world around us. But we are looking out, the soul in us is looking out on this ocean, these magic waves of time. And those magic waves of time are illumined for us by our minds. And our minds are like a moon. It's not a sun, it's a reflected light, pale reflected light. It may be very beautiful, moonlight on the ocean can be so beautiful, but still it's only a reflected light. We need a much greater light than that eventually. So when we look out from our bodies to the world around us, when we see with the inner view, we see new possibilities. Gumsun.
There is revealed everything from the eyes, as if in a tumultuous, misty, dream-like realm. the outline of a deep, mysterious shore. A sailor on the unconscious, fathomless sea, he voyages through a straight, starry world of all sorts. On matter's deck to a spiritual soul.
Yes. So when the soul begins to wake up and we start looking out across the rails of sense, we may see the outline of a dim, mysterious shore. There's a great continent out there somewhere. We can only just see a faint line of it, outlined, drawn, as if in some kind of dream light. Some great destination is out there. The sea becomes not only the sea of time, but the sea of the inconscient, of matter. Here in this world of matter, the spirit is voyaging. Nowadays, now we've evolved mind, particularly we travel through a world of thought. And this world of thought is not only illumined by the moon, the reflected light of the mind, it's illumined by many stars. Each of these stars is a sun, a distant sun, and each of them represents some great truth. But we receive their light only dimly, the many stars. But still there's something very inspiring about looking out into the night sky and seeing those beautiful lights shining down on us. Yes?
2 words, limb, L-I-M-N-E-D, limb.
So what was the first one?
There is a 910.
Yes.
There is limbed.
Limbed, it means outlined. It's what an artist does with his pencil. Yes? And tenuous is... Tenuous, it means it's very... If something is tenuous, it's very thin and fragile. So this is, of course, he says it's the light which is tenuous. But it gives us a picture of a very faint line that's maybe not continuous, broken here, or becomes very fragile and thin. And we interpret that as the outline of a dim, mysterious shore. It's some great possibility which is out there, perhaps waiting for the soul to discover it.
Like silhouette, S-I-L-H-O-U-T-T.
A silhouette usually is a black shape against a white background, so that we see only the shape, no? But this is only a line. If you're out at sea, no? And you look on the horizon, very often the horizon is just the line of the sea. But if there's a land, if there's an island or a continent there, you might see a shadowy kind of outline. That's what he's describing. There's a whole continent there, a whole world. So he recognizes that he's a sailor on this fathomless sea of the inconscient, of matter. And he's voyaging, his consciousness voyages through a world of thought. The deck on which the sailor is standing, he has his feet on matter, but he's aiming at, his goal is a spiritual sun. He's going to have to leave matter behind. Or perhaps he can keep his feet on matter, and perhaps even matter will take him to that spiritual sun. Kamala.
across the noise and multitudinous cry, across the rapt, unknowable silence, through a strange mid-world under supernal skies, beyond Earth's longitudes and latitudes. His goal is fixed outside all present maps.
Yes, this is true for all of us. I love these lines. No? Here we are sailing on this sea of time, on this sea of the inconscient. Here we are, we have our feet on matter's deck, and we cross through. All around us there's noise and many voices, the multitudinous cry. But sometimes there's rapt, unknowable silences. We are passing through this strange mid-world. In European literature, the earth is often referred to as the middle world. There's heaven above, there's the lower deeps below. Here we are in the middle. This strange mid-world. And above us are these supernal skies, not just this limited earth atmosphere, something much more vast and powerful. We will sail beyond Earth's longitudes and latitudes. We can draw these lines on our globe, and work out where we are. But we are going to have to go beyond all that, beyond all present maps, to somewhere else. Our goal is beyond anywhere on this earth. Dhanalakshmi.
But none learns whither through the unknown he sails, or what secret mission the great mother gave. In the hidden strength of her omnipotent will, driven by her breath across life, crossing deep, through the thunder's roar and through the windless hush, through fog and mist, where nothing more is seen. He carries her sealed orders in his breast.
Yes. None of us knows where we are going through the unknown future. Each of us has been given a secret mission by the Supreme Mother and by Mother Nature even. And she is driving us. We are not aware of that hidden strength of her all-powerful will, but that's what's driving us. Her breath is driving us across this tossing. Now the ocean has become the ocean of life, this violent, troubled ocean of life. And there's all different kinds of weather. There's the thunder's roar, and sometimes your ship hardly moves at all because there's no wind. There's this windless hush and silence. And sometimes there's fog and mist, so you have no idea where you are or where you are going. No. But all the time we are carrying her sealed orders in our breast. So sealed orders are given to a sailor or a soldier by his commander, and he is not allowed to open them until a certain stage in his journey. He will be given a sign, that now you can open the orders. They're secret. Nobody's supposed to know what they are. And the person who's carrying them himself, he doesn't know what are the sealed orders. She puts her seal. Sarojini.
Next we see opening the nesting bridge, whether to a blank or in the unseen. He goes armed with her fate to discover a new mind and body in the city of God.
Yes. So at a late stage, he will find out. We will find out. The time will come when we can open that mystic script that we are carrying here in our hearts. No? Then we'll find out whether we are destined for a blank port in the unseen. Are we going to merge into nirvana? Are we going to be dissolved to become nothing? No? Or has the Great Mother given us her command, her decree, to discover a new mind, not this limited human mind, a new mind and a new kind of body in the city of God, when the earth becomes transformed. Did you read the next two lines, or did I cut you short? When he finds a new mind and body in the city of God, then he will be able to enshrine, to make his body the shrine for the immortal, and the body itself will be glorified. And this finite, limited being will be united with infinity. Olesia.
Across the soul waves for the endless years, the ocean winds impel his errant boat, the cosmic waters flashing as he goes, a rumor around him, and danger and the cold. Always he follows into force's wake. He sails through life and death and other life. He travels on through waking and through sleep.
This is the traveler in time, the soul in us. So she is driving him forward with her ocean winds. She's driving him on through time, across the salt waste of the endless years, the years that seem to go on and on and on and never yield any fruit. We think of the ocean sometimes as a salt waste, that there's no fruits there. But he's driven onwards, and he hears the sound of the cosmic waters, the universal waters, making that gentle sound against the sides of his boat, plashing. It's not quite splashing, that's stronger. This is a gentle sound on the side of a wooden boat. There's a sound, a noise around him, the noise of the ocean, and there's danger, and always there's this call to go further and further. She's driving him, but also he follows her. He follows in the wake of her force. When we're traveling in a boat, there's always a wake behind it, a trail of disturbed water. And fish and dolphins, they like to travel in that wake because it's somehow the boat pulls them along. It makes them easier for them to follow. So this sailor, he's traveling, he's following where the mother leads him. She's driving him, she's also leading him. Sorry? A rumor. Yes, a rumor, we usually mean people telling tales or telling us things that are not certain. but basically the word just means a sound. There's a sound of voices or the sound of the waves. There's a rumor, the sound around him, and danger and a call. So he has to follow where she leads. He sails through life and death and other life. He travels on through waking and through sleep. He can't cease his journey. She will drive him and attract him until he really reaches the goal. So I think we'll stop there for today. Anybody would like to ask anything?
I think that line here, to discover a new mind and body in the city of God, one is tempted to think that is what we should do in Auroville.
Of course, it's what we're in Auroville for, to turn Auroville into the city of God. But we will need to make a lot of inner progress before we can do that.
It reminds me there's a lot of imagery which reminds me of the ancient mariner.
Yes. Yes. Aurobindo travelled by ship quite a lot to England and from England. And of course the imagery is there in poetry. But he's giving it another dimension of meaning. It's not just purely the physical journey. It's a symbol quest, a symbolic journey, and it's the sailor in this case is the human soul, which is also the divine soul. It's the Lord who has individualized himself in all his creatures. So the full extent of this secret is revealed in the last lines. We'll read them next week.
Or, passing through a gate of pillar rocks, venturing not yet to cross oceans unnamed, and journey into a dream of distances, he travels close to unfamiliar coasts and finds new haven in storm-troubled isles. Or, guided by a sure compass in his thought, he plunges through a bright haze that hides the stars, steering on the trade routes of ignorance. His prow pushes towards undiscovered shores. He chances on unimagined continents. A seeker of the islands of the Blest, he leaves the last lands, crosses the ultimate seas. He turns to eternal things his symbol quest. Life changes for him its time-constructed scenes, its images veiling infinity. Earth's borders recede, and the terrestrial air hangs round him no longer its translucent veil. He has crossed the limit of mortal thought and hope. he has reached the world's end and stares beyond. The eyes of mortal body plunge their gaze into eyes that look upon eternity. A greater world time's traveller must explore. At last he hears a chanting on the heights, and the far speaks, and the unknown grows near. He crosses the boundaries of the unseen, and passes over the edge of mortal sight to a new vision of himself and things. He is a spirit in an unfinished world that knows him not and cannot know itself. The surface symbol of his goalless quest takes deeper meanings to his inner view. His is a search of darkness for the light, of mortal life for immortality. In the vessel of an earthly embodiment, over the narrow rails of limiting sense, he looks out on the magic waves of time, where mind, like a moon, illumines the world's dark. There is limbed, ever retreating from the eyes, as if in a tenuous, misty dream light drawn, the outline of a dim, mysterious shore. A sailor on the inconscient's fathomless sea, he voyages through a starry world of thought on matter's deck to a spiritual sun. Across the noise and multitudinous cry, across the rapt, unknowable silences, through a strange mid-world under supernal skies, beyond earth's longitudes and latitudes, his goal is fixed outside all present maps. But none learns whither through the unknown he sails, or what secret mission the Great Mother gave. In the hidden strength of her omnipotent will, driven by her breath across life's tossing deep, through the thunder's roar and through the windless hush, through fog and mist where nothing more is seen, he carries her sealed orders in his breast. Late will he know, opening the mystic script, whether to a blank port in the unseen he goes, or, armed with her fiat, to discover a new mind and body in the city of God, and enshrine the immortal in his glory's house, and make the finite one with infinity. Across the salt waste of the endless years, her ocean winds impel his errant boat, the cosmic waters plashing as he goes, a rumour around him, and danger, and a call. Always he follows in her force's wake. He sails through life and death and other life. He travels on through waking and through sleep.